giving the time for joining the webinar. Um, and thank you so much. Okay, so in today's webinar, what we are going to do is how people will be authenticating themselves with AWS EKS cluster. Okay, so how in the real time, like our company, uh, uh, how our company, when I'm working, how we use to give access to the people, my colleagues, okay, how I can give the access, how I will be giving the access to the colleagues. Actually, that's what I'm going to share as part of the today's webinar using RBAC uh, and using service accounts. Okay, so we will be discussing about that. Before discussing about that, let me introduce myself. Actually, I'm Shiva. So I have overall 8+ years of experience in the IT industry. And initially, I started with as a developer in Java and Spring Boot, and gradually I've shifted to the DevOps side. And now I'm working as senior DevOps engineer in one of the IT company. Okay, I have not shared the screen yet. I will be soon, but yeah, I'm just saying the introduction topics actually. So this webinar is all about the accessing the EKS cluster. Okay, how we can provide the access to the EKS cluster to many people. Okay, to many people in your organization actually who wants access. For them, you need to provide the access to the EKS cluster. Uh, we can provide the access and all those things we will be discussing as part of this today's session actually. So now let me share my screen now. Okay, let me share my screen and let me discuss the prerequisites that are required for this webinar actually. So like in order to properly understand the webinar, just for your information, let me open the paint and let me write all the prerequisites that are required. One prerequisite that is required is your AWS account. You need to have AWS account. That is because you need to create an EKS cluster. So in order to create an EKS cluster, you need to have an AWS account. That's what the one prerequisite. Okay, pre-requirements. Let me write the heading as well. Pre-requirements. Pre-requirements is the heading that I would like to mention. So yeah, uh, this is what it is. And now AWS account is the first pre-requirement, and the second one is going to be the knowledge, a small knowledge on AWS IAM service, little knowledge on little little knowledge on AWS IAM service. Okay, that's what the second requirement. See, I'll address your questions definitely, which are there in the chat, but I'll take some time after that. I'll address your questions. Okay, some knowledge on little knowledge on AWS, like Kubernetes. Let me say an all actually Kubernetes environment. Okay, so these are the just three prerequisites that are required actually. So one is AWS account. Second one is the little knowledge on AWS IAM service. Okay, because we are going to use the IAM service as in our webinar actually, and you need to understand little knowledge on the Kubernetes environment. Okay, you need to understand free account is sufficient, no issues actually. Yes, this session is being recorded. Okay, this will be uploaded to YouTube. Okay, that's what you need to understand. Okay, thank you. Okay, so these are the few prerequisites that are required. Okay, now see, first of all, before going to our actual webinar session, first you need to understand why the access is required. Okay, why the access to the Kubernetes cluster is required. Suppose there is a Kubernetes cluster that you are managing. Okay, this is the Kubernetes cluster that you are managing. This Kubernetes cluster contains multiple things. In this Kubernetes cluster, we have nodes. Okay, Kubernetes cluster is a combination of multiple nodes. Nodes means machines. Okay, so that's what you need to understand. That is why I asked you, like, as a prerequisite, I put some knowledge on Kubernetes, right? That's what I have put. Okay, so it contains multiple nodes. This nodes forms a cluster. Okay, that's what you need to understand. So this is the Kubernetes cluster, EKS Kubernetes cluster. Let me write that EKS Kubernetes cluster. Okay, this is what the EKS Kubernetes cluster that we have. Suppose you are the person who is maintaining this Kubernetes cluster. Okay. So there is a new team member joined in your team, okay, newly joined in your team. And he is the next person who is going to manage this Kubernetes cluster. So as an administrator, you are the administrator who is currently managing the Kubernetes cluster. As an administrator, you need to give the access to your colleague who is newly joined to access the Kubernetes cluster so that he can manage the Kubernetes cluster. So this is one of the use case in order to give the access to the Kubernetes cluster, because your new colleague also required to manage the Kubernetes cluster so that he will be working on that. And you need to give the access to him. How you can give? That's what the one problem statement. Okay. The second thing is, in your real time, if the Kubernetes cluster is there as part of your organization, if you are using Kubernetes in order to deploy your applications on the Kubernetes cluster, many people will be accessing the Kubernetes cluster. Suppose this guy is there, uh, who will be accessing the Kubernetes cluster. Let's think he will be accessing the Kubernetes cluster. Well, like that, there will be multiple people who will be accessing the Kubernetes cluster. This is one more guy who is accessing the Kubernetes cluster. And this is one more guy who is accessing the Kubernetes cluster. And this is one more guy who is accessing the Kubernetes cluster. Suppose the first guy which you are seeing here is a developer. He is a developer. Let's think developer in your organization. He's a developer in your organization. Okay. And the second guy is a tester. Okay. In your organization, he's a tester in your organization. Okay. And the third guy is a, what's that? QA person, quality assurance person, QA person, quality QA engineer, quality assurance engineer. Okay, he is a quality assurance engineer. Okay, the next person is a DevOps engineer. Okay, so let me take this person is a DevOps engineer. These are the multiple persons with multiple roles will be accessing your Kubernetes cluster, right? Here in your organization, developers will be accessing the Kubernetes cluster. Okay, something like this. Testers will be accessing the Kubernetes cluster, something like this. Okay, so QA, quality assurance engineers, will be accessing your Kubernetes cluster, something like this. Okay, and the DevOps person will be accessing the Kubernetes cluster. Like that, multiple people with multiple roles will be accessing the Kubernetes cluster, something like this. So each and every person should not have admin access, right? Because developers are not required to give entire Kubernetes cluster access. Okay, you should not be able to delete the resources in the Kubernetes cluster. Tester should not be able to create the resources in the Kubernetes cluster. QA engineer should not be able to modify the resources in the Kubernetes cluster. Only DevOps persons are the persons who will be having the admin access. He can do whatever he want within the Kubernetes cluster. That means you need to control the access while giving the access permissions to the people. Okay, like that. Here you are giving the access to the developer. Okay, developers will be accessing the Kubernetes cluster, and like that, testers will be accessing the Kubernetes cluster. Okay, something like that. And the quality assurance engineer will be accessing the Kubernetes cluster. Okay, something like this. And DevOps persons will be accessing the Kubernetes cluster. Okay, multiple people will be accessing the Kubernetes cluster. All persons should not have same level of access because developers are not required to manage, they will not manage the Kubernetes cluster. They should not have admin access. Okay, tester should not have admin access. Tester should be only able to test the applications. That's it. Developer should be able to only view the pods in the Kubernetes cluster. QA engineers will be able to only view the pods in the Kubernetes clusters. And the DevOps people will be only able to do entire stuff in the Kubernetes cluster. That means whatever he want, DevOps engineer, he should be able to do. That means he is an administrator. So that means based on his role, you should give the access within the Kubernetes cluster. That means developer should be able to only view. Tester should be only able to test. Quality engineers should be only able to check the quality within the Kubernetes cluster. And the DevOps person should be able to do everything within the Kubernetes cluster. That means he's administrator. Okay. So based on your role within your company, you will be getting the access to the Kubernetes cluster, to the Kubernetes cluster. How this can be done? How this can be done in real time is using RBAC, role-based access control. RBAC, that is role based access control. Okay, this is what the role-based access control. This is where the role-based access control come into the picture. Actually, that means you need to control the access for the different people who are accessing the Kubernetes cluster. With what method you will be controlling the access is using role-based access control. Role-based access control. That's what you need to understand from the point. Okay, is that clear until here, people? Everyone clear with this? Yeah, free account is sufficient. Amarnath, is that clear until here? Yes. Response, please. Response. See, here, IAM, which you are seeing, IAM users are only they will be acting on the like IAM users will be only able to access AWS services. If you create IAM user and give administrator access permissions to the IAM user also, he will not be able to go inside the cluster and he will not be able to get the pods because the access permissions are there within the Kubernetes cluster. But IAM will work on AWS services overall. That is what the difference is between these users and the IAM users. Actually, that's what you need to understand. Using RBAC, will control the access within the Kubernetes cluster, inside the Kubernetes cluster. But IAM users are used to access the AWS services. It might be Lambda, it might be EC2, it might be load balancer, something like AWS services inside the AWS account. But with RBAC, users within the Kubernetes cluster, we are giving the permissions. That's the difference between IAM and RBAC. Yes. Yeah, that is for Shiva Prasad. Can we use ClickLog? Yes, we can use ClickLog. That can be integrated. That's a third-party tool which works as an OAuth, and you will get the access to the EKS cluster. That's also possible. Okay. Yes, Simhadri. Yes, people. Durga Prasad, yes, people from different teams access to the Kubernetes cluster. Why they'll access is, suppose developers has developed their applications and the new version of the application is deployed onto the Kubernetes cluster actually. So they want to check whether the pods of the application which is deployed on the Kubernetes cluster is working fine or not. Okay, so that they will be able to know that it's working fine or not actually. That is why developers also require the access within the Kubernetes cluster actually. So that's how you need to understand. Okay, so now let's move further actually with these particular things. So in order to give the access permissions to users like human beings, you use RBAC. That means role-based access control method. Okay, in order to give permissions to the human beings, we use role-based access control method, RBAC. The second part is, suppose I have new requirement now. Let me open a new diagram for this. Okay, so I have a Kubernetes cluster. This is the Kubernetes cluster that I have. And let me label this one. Okay, so EKS Kubernetes cluster. Okay, EKS Kubernetes cluster. Now, if you see this, I am deploying an application that is called Kubernetes dashboard application to this Kubernetes cluster. What is this? This application name is Kubernetes dashboard. Kubernetes dashboard. Kubernetes dashboard application to the Kubernetes cluster. What this Kubernetes dashboard application does is it collects all the information from the Kubernetes cluster and it shows in its UI. It contains nice user interface, like it has nice UI front end part, and in that it will show this many pods are running, and this pod is using this much amount of CPU, this pod is using this much amount of memory, this many nodes are there in this cluster, this many config maps are there, this many secrets are there. All the details will be shown as part of the UI in this Kubernetes dashboard application. In order to get all the details from the Kubernetes cluster, suppose what this Kubernetes dashboard does, Kubernetes dashboard collects all the information from the Kubernetes cluster that you are that this is deployed to. It collects all the information like how many pods are there, how many nodes are there, how many config maps are there, then the pod CPU usage and the pod memory usage, and all those things data it is going to collect. Kubernetes dashboard application. If Kubernetes dashboard application want to collect all the information from the Kubernetes cluster, so this Kubernetes dashboard should have the permissions in order to collect the information within the Kubernetes cluster. Just understand what is this Kubernetes dashboard application does. Kubernetes dashboard application collects all the information, the number of pods, number of nodes, multiple information that it collects. And if this Kubernetes dashboard application, if it want to collect the information, it requires permissions, right? It requires permissions, right? How we can give permissions to the Kubernetes dashboard application? Okay, using service account. Okay, we use in order to give applications permissions, we use something called service accounts. Okay, suppose we use something called service accounts. Service accounts. This is service account is one of the object in Kubernetes. Okay, like that, suppose you have deployed Jenkins in the Kubernetes cluster. This is the Jenkins application. Okay, this is a Jenkins application that you have deployed, Jenkins. Now, this Jenkins application, what is Jenkins application? Jenkins will act as a CI/CD pipeline. It is a CI/CD pipeline. We can create CI/CD pipelines as part of the Jenkins tool. And this Jenkins will be deploying the applications within the Kubernetes cluster, something like this. It is going to deploy the applications within the Kubernetes cluster, something like this. Okay, it is going to deploy the applications within the Kubernetes cluster. It is not going to read any information from the Kubernetes cluster. It only deploys, it only creates the applications, updates the applications within the Kubernetes cluster. Okay, for such kind of So here, if the Jenkins want to create or update the applications within the Kubernetes cluster, the Jenkins requires permissions in order to do such activities, create and update applications within the Kubernetes cluster. If the Jenkins wants permissions, Jenkins also uses service accounts in order to get the permission. Okay, just understand. In order to give the users permission to access the Kubernetes cluster, you use a method called role-based access control. If you want to give permissions to the applications, then you use a concept called service account. Service account. That's what the difference actually. So that's what the difference. Service accounts. You use the service accounts in order to give the permissions to the applications which are deployed on the Kubernetes cluster, access the Kubernetes resources. Okay, that means other parts of the Kubernetes cluster. Okay, that's what you need to understand from this. You need to understand from this. Beneath access entries are the new method of giving the permissions to the users. Okay, we are not discussing about the access entries. Okay, we are discussing more widely used nowadays method, that is RBAC. Okay, so not required, Sayed Amri. Okay, is that is that clear? What is the service accounts and what is RBAC? We'll discuss. We'll discuss, Karthik. Just we are going. What is role binding? All those things we'll discuss. But yeah, uh, until here, is that clear for everyone? Please response. Yeah, yeah. Okay, okay, okay. Thank you. So now, okay. Before moving further, I would like to help you with this thing actually. So we are starting a new batch from tomorrow on, especially on Docker and Kubernetes. Okay, especially on Docker and Kubernetes. We will be discussing many things in that particular sessions actually. So this is the link for the demo sessions. If you people are interested, you can able to you should be able to join from this particular link actually from tomorrow. It's 9 a.m. IST. Okay, this is the demo link, demo session link. Okay, so Samreen, you can get that information from the Naresh IT people. Okay, so if you join tomorrow, then you will be uh, uh, like you'll be getting that information. So all those things you'll be getting from the Naresh IT people. Okay, so that's what the demo session link is. Okay, just use that link in order to join for the tomorrow's uh, uh, demo sessions actually. So 9 a.m. IST. Okay, just remember the time as well. Okay, we'll discuss what are the topics that we are going to discuss as part of the sessions actually, as part of the course, and everything will be in real time because whatever I experienced in the company, I'll be discussing with that. We will be working together on that. Okay, so yeah, we'll see that from the next class actually. Okay, let's continue with the current session. Okay, so yeah, let's continue with the uh, current session actually. Okay, so now you people got when to use RBAC and when to use service accounts. Okay, service accounts should be used whenever you want to give access to the applications in order to access the Kubernetes cluster. And RBAC is used if you want to give the permissions to the users who want to access the Kubernetes cluster. Okay, so in this RBAC method, so let me open a new diagram again. In this RBAC method, we use some Kubernetes objects. These are the Kubernetes objects that we use. Role binding. This is something called just, I'll discuss about the in details of that. Just give me some time. Role binding, cluster role, and cluster role binding, role binding. Okay, we use these objects of Kubernetes in order to work with RBAC. That is objects of uh, RBAC. That means that's the point actually. So these are the objects that we use in order to work with RBAC. Role binding, cluster role binding. Okay, so that's what it is. Okay, so these are the things. Okay, now also understand when to use role, what is role and what is cluster role. Okay, here you will be writing a manifest file for the role. Suppose this is the role manifest file. Okay, something like this. This is the role manifest file. Role. In the role manifest file, Kubernetes is a combination of multiple things. One of the concept is manifest files. In order to deploy something, you need to write a manifest file. Okay. In this role manifest file, what you are going to do is you are going to mention all the details, like on what things you want to give permissions. Like I want to give permissions to pods, to create pods. I want to give permissions to create deployments. I want to give permissions to delete the config maps. I want to give permissions to the update the deployments. I want to give permissions to view the Kubernetes cluster. So you will be listing the permissions. You will be whitelisting the permissions, all the permissions which you want to give to a user. You will be writing in that. Okay, in the role manifest file, what you will be doing in the role manifest file, you will be mentioning all the permissions that you want to give to the user. Okay, that's what the role manifest file is. Okay, in the role manifest file, you will be mentioning all the details, all the permissions that you want to give for the user. Okay, that's what you need to understand. Now, what you will be doing in order to give this permissions to the user, let me show you the role manifest file, how it looks like. Okay, before moving further, to be very clear, actually, security, role and role binding. If you see this role, you see that here. Okay, now this is how the role manifest file looks like. It's how the role manifest file looks like. Okay, so everything in detail will be going in our actual sessions, but yeah, just I am going. You want to increase the font size? Yeah, let me increase the font size. 1 second. Appearance, and let me enter the zoom mode. In this file. Okay, so now you can see that here in the this is a role manifest file. Okay, in this role manifest file, I will be defining the permissions. Like I want to give the permissions through the pods and config maps, get permissions, list permissions, delete permissions, and watch permissions. For the deployments in the Kubernetes cluster, want to give get permissions, list permissions, and create permissions. Okay, just understand. I will be defining the permissions that I want to give to the user in the role manifest file. What is this? This API group and API groups we'll be discussing in our actual classes. Okay, and all those things, everything which I'm not mentioning here. Okay, so just understand in the role we will be defining all the permissions and what kind of permissions. Okay, to what kind of objects that you want to give to the user, you will be mentioning that in the role manifest file. That's what you need. You can see it here. Okay, that's what this is a role. You will be writing, you will be mentioning all the permissions that you want to give in the role manifest file. Okay, that's what you need to understand. And the second part, what you will be doing is you will be creating, you will be having, suppose I have told you, right? A new colleague has joined in your team. That colleague need to get an access to the Kubernetes cluster. Initial activity that you do is you create IAM user for him. Okay, in the IAM service of AWS, you create IAM user. Okay, IAM user for him. Okay, with admin access, administrator access, you will create admin access or EKS admin access, whatever. Okay, I have created with admin access. Okay, so we'll be creating that soon. Okay, so this username is, let's take this username is Ramu. Okay, let me take this username is whatever. Okay, this username is Raj. Okay, let me take whatever Ramu. Okay, so this IAM username is Ramu. Ramu has joined in your team. Okay, Ramu has joined in your team and you have created IAM user for him. And this IAM, this Ramu should get the access within the Kubernetes cluster. Okay, all the permissions that you want to give to the Ramu about pods, config maps, deployments, all those permissions you have mentioned in the role manifest file. In the role manifest file. Now, what you'll be doing is you will be having something called group in the in this RBAC method. You'll be having something called group. Okay, so all the IAM users who wants to get the permissions of this role, which you have written, will be added to this group. Okay, Ramu is going to be added to this group. Ramu is going to be added to this group. This is something called group. Okay, so GROUP group. Okay, if some other people join, suppose Raju joined next day. Okay, so you want to give the same permissions to the Raju as well as Ramu. Okay, so Raju will be added to this group, something like that. Okay, so now what? Just understand here. You will be defining all the permissions in the role, and you will be adding these IAM users in the group. Okay, and you will be mapping this role and the group with role binding. Okay, you will be mapping this role and the group with role binding. Okay, this is something called new object role binding. Okay, role binding. Okay, so this is the role, this is the group where you have added IAM users, and you in the role you will be mentioning all the permissions that you want to give to the Ramu, and Ramu will be added to the group, and with the help of role binding you will be mapping the role and the group together. Role and the group together, something like this. Role and the group together, so that whatever the permissions that you have defined in the role, that permissions will be getting to the users which are added to the group. And this group, you will be updating something called config map that is in the kube system namespace, that is AWS auth config map in the kube system namespace. I will be doing that this one in practical manner. AWS auth config map in kube system namespace. Different system namespace. Okay, so now, now because of this reason, here Ramu, here Ramu is going to get Ramu is going to get the permissions which you have defined in the role. So what we have defined in the role? In the role, we have defined that Ramu should get the pods permission, config maps permission. He should be able to get the pods, list the pods, delete the pods, and watch the pods. He should be able to get the deployments, okay, list the deployments, and create the deployments. But he should not be able to delete the deployments. Okay, that's how we give permissions. This is the theoretical manner and the diagrammatic manner, but we will be seeing in a practical manner. Okay, we'll be seeing that. But this is that clear until here? Actually, is that clear for everyone? Yes, yes, Teju. Correct. Is that clear until here? What is happening actually and all? Yes, yes. Thank you. Okay, now let's move further. Okay, let's move further actually. So there are two types of resources in the Kubernetes cluster. There are two types of resources in the Kubernetes cluster, which are namespace scoped and non-namespace scoped resources. If you want to give permissions to the namespace scope resources, like suppose the pods belong to particular namespace, pod is, you will be saying this pod is deployed to default namespace. This pod is deployed to testing namespace. This pod is deployed to monitoring namespace. So, but there are two types of resources. Namespace scope, you can deploy within the namespace. The cluster scope resources, like you can deploy within the entire cluster. You cannot say node belongs to this particular namespace. You cannot say that. Node will not belongs to any namespace given this node. Okay. You cannot say persistent volume belongs to any namespace. You cannot say persistent volume belongs to this particular namespace. That is not namespace scope resource. That is a cluster scope resource. Okay, so there are two types of resources. One is namespace scope. Second one is non-namespace scope resource. In order to give permissions to the namespace scope resources, you can use role, something like this, role and role binding. In order to give permissions to the namespace scope resources, you can use role and cluster role. Suppose in giving permissions to, let me write it here so that it will be clear. Actually, giving permissions to namespace scoped resources. You will be using, in order to give permissions to namespace scope resources, you will be using role object and cluster role. You can use both in order to give permissions to the namespace scope resources. Okay. If you are using, here I am using role, but if you are using cluster role, you need to use cluster role binding. I'm using role, that is why I'm using role binding in order to map role and the group. But if you are using cluster role in order to give the permissions for the namespace scope resources, you need to use cluster role binding in order to map role and the group. That's it. That's the difference. Okay. Now, if you giving permissions to non-namespace scoped resources. If you want to give permissions to non-namespace scope resources, you need to only use cluster role. You cannot use role for that. You need to use cluster role. Okay, non-namespace scope resources and namespace scope resources. If you want to give permissions to namespace scope resources, you can use both role and cluster role. But if you want to give permissions to non-namespace scope resources, you can only use cluster role, but you cannot use role. How to understand which are namespace scoped and which resources are namespace scoped and which resources are not namespace scoped? How to understand that? You need to go to your terminal where you have created EKS cluster and all, and you need to just enter kubectl API hyphen resources. You need to enter this one. You will be getting all the objects that you can use as per the Kubernetes. So you can see that here. You can see nodes. It is saying false here. Namespaced represents whether that is namespace scoped or non-namespace scoped. If it is saying false, it's not namespace scoped. You can see the pods. It is saying true. That means it's a namespace scoped resource. Okay, so if you type this command, it will list all the resources that that can be deployed into the Kubernetes cluster, and that also shows whether it is namespace scope or non-namespace scoped resource. Okay, that's what you need to understand from this point. Okay, so you need to find out which namespace scope, which is a namespace scope and which is non-namespace scope, and based on that, you can give the permissions to the users for namespace scope resources and non-namespace scope resources. Okay, that's what you need to understand. Okay, that's what you need to understand. Is that clear until here, please, everyone? Is that clear? Is that clear? Yes. Okay, in a detailed manner, we'll be discussing in our actual class. Okay, very detailed actually. So as we do not have time for the day, okay, we as far as I can, I have explained actually. So see, that's what it is. Viraya, there are two types of objects in the Kubernetes cluster, namespace scoped and non-namespace scoped. There are namespaces in the Kubernetes cluster first. You can deploy pods in particular namespace. Okay, so you can deploy what is that? Deployments in particular namespace. Okay, namespace is a kind of partition that you do within the Kubernetes cluster. Okay, that's what it is. Okay, so that's a namespace scope, which the Kubernetes objects which can be deployed within the namespace, that is nothing but namespace scoped objects. Okay, the Kubernetes objects which can be deployed on a cluster within entire cluster, that is called non-namespace scoped resources. That's what you need to understand. Okay, so that's the thing. I hope it's that clear, right? So now let's move further. Okay, so now let's deal with our actual practical session. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a new diagram. Okay, I'm going to create, first thing, I'm going to create an IAM user. Create an IAM user named, what is that name of the IAM user? I've told you, Ramu is the IAM user. I'm going to it's for 45 to 50 days, Akash. Okay, it's for 45 to 50 days. Definitely we'll discuss that in a next session, actually on the demo sessions. Okay, create an IAM user called Ramu. Okay, I'm going to create an IAM user as a first case. Okay, now I am going to, as a second point, I am going to configure access keys and secret access keys for the IAM user. Okay, configure this keys, this key, and secret access key for this user in my local machine for this user. Okay, so I need to show you in a practical manner. I should only act as an administrator. I should only act as an IAM user, like new user as well. So how I can manage, how I am going to manage this is, suppose let me, this is a Kubernetes cluster that I have. Okay, so I am going to access as an administrator. Suppose I am the actual one who is the administrator. Suppose this is a user who is an administrator who is accessing the Kubernetes cluster, something like this. I am accessing the Kubernetes cluster. As an administrator, if you see, I'm the administrator. I'm able to access all the things, kubectl, get all hyphen all hyphen namespaces. You see, I'm able to get each and everything in the Kubernetes cluster. You can see I'm not getting any error within the Kubernetes cluster. Okay, I'm not getting any error. That means I am an administrator. I can able to access everything within the Kubernetes cluster. Okay, so that's what I'm accessing the Kubernetes cluster. I have shown you. He's an administrator. He's an admin. Okay, he's an admin. I'm Shiva, and he's an admin. Okay, so ADMIN. Okay, he's an admin. Okay, now I'm going to create IAM user called Ramu. Let me go here to the AWS account and create an IAM user called Ramu. How can I create? Go to IAM service, go here, open the new tab and click on this one. And this is a place you need to go to something called users, not to create an IAM user. Okay, so I need to delete this existing one. Once again, let me delete this existing one, which I don't want. I want to create freshly. Okay, which is already there. This one, once again, let me delete. Okay, it's not found. It's already deleted. You can see that here. Okay, so now, see here, I want to create a new user that is called IAM user named Ramu. Okay, Ramu, I would like to create. Okay, now let me click on next. I am attaching this user directly the policies. I am giving the administrator access policy. You can see that here. Okay, I'm giving administrator access. You can see that here, administrator access, entire administrator access. I'm giving. You can see that, click on next. And let me click on create a user. Okay, I have created a Ramu user. You can see very clearly this one. Okay, I have created a Ramu user. I need to create access keys and secret access keys for this Ramo user. Go to credentials and go to access keys, create an access key. Okay, so I'm using this control command line interface for creating an access key, and I'm clicking on this one. I'm giving some confirmation in order to create it. Okay, let me click on next. I don't want to give any description and all. Create an access key. It is creating an access key and secret access key. Let me copy this access key. Go to your terminal, and how I can configure. See, I am accessing the Kubernetes cluster and the AWS account with my admin access keys, right? I am accessing the AWS account with my admin access keys. Now I want to configure my local CLI with Ramo access keys as well. Okay, because I need to show you. Okay, with Ramo access keys also, I want to configure my local CLI, local command line interface with Ramo access keys as well. How I can configure is using profiles. AWS configure hyphen profile is equal to new Ramo new Ramo access, new Ramo EKS access. Okay, that's what the profile name that I am going to give. That's what the profile name. Now it is going to ask for access keys. Let me provide the access key, and it is going to ask for secret access key. You can copy this one secret access key from this point and provide the secret access key. It is going to ask for region where your cluster is there, like US East. One is the AWS region. We'll be discussing what is region and all those things, access keys and secret access key in our actual session. But yeah, now let me click on enter. Okay, we have configured AWS access uh, uh, new IAM user, okay, with access keys and secret access keys. Okay, now if you want to test this user permissions, whether this user is able to access the Kubernetes cluster or not, whether it is whether this user is able to access the AWS account or not. First thing, so AWS S3 LS. If you type just AWS S3 LS, if you just only type this one, my AWS CLI in my local machine is going to use administrator access keys and secret access keys. Administrator access keys and secret access keys. If you want to make the AWS CLI to use the Ramo user access keys and secret access keys, you need to provide this one hyphen profile is equal to new Ramo EKS access. Okay, so if you use this profile, because we have configured with profile access keys and secret access keys of Ramo, we have configured with profile. If you use this profile, my local AWS CLI software will use the access keys and secret access keys of Ramo and connect to the AWS account. Okay, that's what the profile information is. Now, what I'm going to do is I have created an IAM user called Ramo. Let me go to the diagram again. I have configured access key and secret access keys for this user. I've configured and created. Now, what I'm going to do, now both users are there. Suppose we have these two users in the, suppose this another user is there now on my local machine, that is Ramo. This is another user, new user from my local machine. Okay, which can access AWS account using profile, right? So that's what it is. Now this is the Ramo. This is my local machine. Let me draw something like this. This is my local terminal. Okay, this is my local terminal or the command prompt, whatever you think. Okay, and this one is the Ramo. Let me write this side part. Okay, 1 second. Let me write this side. Ramo. And he's a developer. He's a developer in your organization. Okay, so he's newly joined in your organization. He's a developer. Now, he want to access the Kubernetes cluster as a developer. Now, what I need to do? I need to switch now. If I type kubectl get pods, kubectl get pods, kubectl get all, all namespaces. If I type this one, I am accessing the Kubernetes cluster as an administrator like this. As an administrator, I'm accessing the Kubernetes cluster. This part I'm saying. Okay. So I want to switch my local command prompt from administrator to the Ramu user. I want to switch my local command prompt with the administrator and Ramu user to Ramu user and access the Kubernetes cluster. Okay, just understand. I want to switch my local command prompt from the administrator to the Ramu user and access the Kubernetes cluster. Generally, in your real time, what will happen is this Ramu user is as per the different laptop. That laptop will be accessing the Kubernetes cluster. But I need to show a demo for you so that I am acting as both administrator and Ramu user. Okay, so in my same machine, how I am acting as both using profile. I want to switch from the admin user to the Ramu user, and let me switch it actually. How to switch actually? We have some command AWS EKS update -cube config. What is this cube config and all those things we'll be discussing in the actual regular class. But yeah, as of now, name or then you need to provide the name of the cluster. UAT-test is a cluster name, and the region where the cluster exists. Region is US East 1 is a region where the cluster exists, and the profile. If you provide the profile, that means if you provide the profile of Ramu, that means you are switching the user from admin to the Shiva user to the Ramu user. Okay, that's what you can see that in the diagram. From the Shiva user, you are switching to Ramu user. If you are providing the profile, because we have configured profile. If you click on enter, okay, now 1 second. There is some spelling mistake. You can see that here. Update -cube config. Okay. Here. Okay, I'm switching to the UAT-test. I think the cluster name is different. Let me go to the cluster name. Let me find out the cluster name, with what name the cluster is created. And it is UAT-dev is the cluster name, but not UAT-test. Okay, so let me go here and update the cluster name, that is UAT-dev. Okay, that's what it is. Okay, now I have switched from the RAM admin user, that is Shiva, to the Ramu user who is developer. Okay, now if I access the Kubernetes cluster, let me clear the screen. As the Ramu user, I'm accessing the Kubernetes cluster. Cubes, it will get pods. What you're getting, you are not authorized. You are not authorized to access the Kubernetes cluster. Okay, just see that here. You are not authorized to access the Kubernetes cluster. If you type the same commands, cubes, it'll get all all namespaces. You will not be authorized. You cannot, because as a Ramu user, we have not given permissions. It is saying, you can see that here, you are not authorized. Who is accessing the Kubernetes cluster now? Ramu user is accessing the Kubernetes cluster. Ramu user don't have permissions to access the Kubernetes cluster. And that is why it is saying you are not authorized to access the Kubernetes cluster. Right. Now it is saying, let me paste it here. In the first time access, what we have got it here, this is giving you that you are not authorized. Okay, that's what it is giving you. You are not authorized. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to switch from the Ramu user to the again the admin user. How I can switch actually? How I can switch is something like this. Okay, so using the same command without profile. If you remove the profile, you will be again back to the actual admin user. Okay, I'm again switching back to the admin user. Now admin can get all the resources within the Kubernetes cluster. You can see that very clearly. Okay, you can see that admin is accessing the Kubernetes cluster again. He's getting the resources. We have not given permissions, Vishnu, to the Ramu user. We have not given permissions yet. We have given the permissions. You see that here in the for the Ramu user, we have given the permissions administrator access. Here you can see the policy name administrator access. This administrator access will only give permissions in the AWS account, but not within the Kubernetes cluster. That's what you need to understand. That's why we have not given the permissions yet. Yeah, Ramu needs role and role binding to be attached so that he gets the permissions. Okay, now as I've switched from the Ramu user to the admin user. This is the first step that I did. This is a switching. This is the first step. First step is this one, and this is the second step that I did. Switching the first after doing the first step, I have tested with kubectl commands. That is something called this second step, and this is going to third step, switching from Ramu user to the admin user back. And as an admin user, I'm able to access the pods and all the things in the Kubernetes cluster. Now, as an administrator, I need to provide the role and role binding. I need to provide the access to Ramu user now. I need to provide the access to Ramu user. How I can provide the access to Ramu user is using role and role binding. Okay, we have discussed this point. Using role and role binding. That switch concept. Yeah, it should be same like that. Okay, so okay, you can see that here. I need to go to this place. I am going to show you the role. You can see that here. This is the role where we have defined all the permissions. The name of the role is developer-role, and we have role binding. You can see that here. This is going to be the role binding manifest file. You can very clearly see that. Okay, which maps the group named developer and the role which we have created. Okay, you can see that this is the role. Okay, just put this side by side. They will be understanding. Okay, this is the role binding. You can see, just understand this one. So this is the role name is developer role. Okay, this is the developer role. This developer role will be attached to the developer group using this role binding. That's what the diagram we have drawn. Okay, previously. You can just verify the diagram one more time. Where is that? Come on. It should be this one, right? So we are mapping role and the group together with role binding. That's what we are doing in the manifest file. You can see that here. Using role binding, we are mapping group and the role, developer role together. Okay, that's what we are doing. Now let's deploy this to role and role binding to the Kubernetes cluster. I'll be addressing the questions. Please give me some time. Okay, kubectl apply -f developer -role.yaml. I'm deploying as an administrator. I'm deploying this one. If that Ramu user cannot deploy this one, okay, because he does not have any permissions to deploy. Okay, now if you deploy kubectl apply -f developer -role binding.yaml. Okay, I'm deploying role and role binding. Role gives the permissions. Okay, role in the role manifest file, you will be defining all the permissions. In the role binding manifest file, you will be mapping role and the group together. Right. So now what you need to do is you need to add this Ramu user to the group. And as how you are going to add by updating the config map of AWS auth within the Kubernetes cluster. Okay, now this is the config map that you need to see. Okay, just we'll be discussing what is config map and all those things in our regular session. But yeah, this is the config map. Okay, now let me uncomment this one. And what is the user ARN? Go to the IAM account, IAM user Ramu, copy the ARN of the Ramu, and go to this particular place, update the user ARN, and the username is Ramu. Ramu is a username, and it is the group he belongs to is developer group. Okay, just understand what we are doing here. We are adding the Ramu user to the developer group. Okay, because developer group is attached to the role which has these permissions. If the Ramu is added to that group, Ramu also gets the permissions which you have defined in the role. Okay, that's what we are doing it here. Okay, that's what you need to understand. Okay, now let me move here and deploy this one. Okay, let me move ahead and deploy this config map to the Kubernetes cluster. And this need to be deployed in the kube system namespace. This need to be deployed in the kube system namespace. Go here and ls and let me deploy kubectl apply -f AWS-auth is the and you also need to understand the name of the config map should be AWS auth only. Okay, that's a mandatory one. Okay, now let me go ahead and deploy this one to the kube system namespace. Just apply that one. Okay, so version one convert handle JSON. Okay, that's a okay. There is a problem with this one actually. One second, let me do this control Z. This is what should be just. Let me apply this one. Okay, so in second there is a and let me remove this, which are not required for me. And let me try to apply it now. You can see that here, AWS auth config map is created. Okay, there is some indentation problems previously that we have, and we have removed that one, and we have deployed that one. You can very clearly see that AWS auth config map is created. Now let me access the resources. Okay, as an administrator, I'm accessing the Kubernetes resources. Shiva user, I'm accessing the Kubernetes cluster resources. You can see that here, I'm able to get all the resources within the Kubernetes cluster. Now, what I want to do is, I want to switch from, as an admin user, I have given the permissions to Ramo. As an admin user, I have given the permissions to Ramo. Now I want to switch the Shiva user from the Shiva user to Ramo user. I want to switch from the Shiva user to Ramo user. How I can switch? I can switch using profile. Okay, same command again. AWS EKS update -n config -n name, cluster name and -n region, the cluster region and the profile. Okay, that's what you need to understand. AWS Ramo EKS access. Let me switch to the Ramo user. Now, I have switched to the Ramo user. Now, previously, what you have got if you access as a Ramo user, you have got something called if you put kubectl get pods, we have got unauthorized. But as an admin user, we have given the permissions to the Ramo user to get the pods now. You can see that here. He can able to get the pods. These are nothing but verbs. We call it as I'll be discussing in the future session. But yeah, now if you apply, if you try to get has I have switched to Ramo user kubectl get pods. Now, if you click on enter, he is not getting any error. That means he is able to get the resources. He got the permissions in order to get the pods. Okay, you can see that here. It is saying no resources found in the default namespace. Now let me try to create the deployment because Ramo has the permissions to create the deployment. Or what I can do is, as an administrator, let me create a deployment. Let me switch back to the administrator, to the Shiva user, and create the deployment. Okay, so let me create a deployment. How to create a deployment? kubectl create deploy. Deployment name is test hyphen image of the deployment. Let me use nginx. Okay, hyphen replicas is equal to 10. I want to deploy 10 replicas of nginx image. Deployment got created. And if you see kubectl get pods, I am able to get the pods. You can see that here. Now let me switch back to the Ramo user again. Okay, so now as a Ramo user, I can be able to get the deployments. Kubectl get deploy. You can see that here. I'm able to get the deployments. You can see that here. I'm able to get the pods. Get the pods as a Ramo user. You can see that you can able to get the pods. Why? Because we have given the permissions to the Ramo user to get the pods. You can see that here, and to get the deployments. Deployments get. You can see the deployments. Okay, that's what you need to understand. Now, I have not given the Ramo user to delete the deployments. You can see that very clearly. Now, let me go here and let me try to delete the test deployment from the Ramo user. Okay, Ramo user is not given the permissions to delete the deployment. But what will happen if he deletes? He should get permission denied. You can see that here. He should get 4.3 forbidden. Okay, so kubectl delete deploy test. I'm going to delete this one. Now, what it is saying, you are going to get forbidden, 403 forbidden. The test is forbidden. User Ramo cannot delete resource deployment. Okay, in API group apps namespace default, because he do not have, as an administrator, I have not given the permissions to Ramu to delete the deployments. Okay, so that's what you need to understand. Okay, so this is the fourth step that we have done. As an administrator, we did not give the Ramu permissions to delete the deployments actually. That's the fourth step we have done. Okay, so now you can see he's clearly getting user is not able to delete the, will not be able to delete the deployments. Now, you see, you can check by executing the command delete deployment and test actually. You can also check something like this also. kubectl or I'm executing this command as part of Ramu user. Okay, I've switched to Ramu user here. You can see that here. I switched to Ramu user. You can very clearly see that. Okay, kubectl auth, I'm asking to the Kubernetes cluster as a Ramu user. I'm asking to the Kubernetes cluster that can I delete deployments? Deployments. Can I delete deployment? Deployment shortcut is deploy. Okay, kubectl auth, can I delete deploy? Okay, it will clearly say, Kubernetes clearly says that you cannot delete. It is saying no, you cannot, you don't have permissions to delete the deployment. Okay, instead of typing this command to delete the deployment, you can also check whether you have permissions to delete the deployment or not. Okay, like that, kubectl auth, can I get deploy? Can I get the deployments? He has the permissions to get the deployments, right? You can see that here. Deployments, he can be able to get the deployments, right? He has the permissions to get the deployments. If you try to click on enter, now is Kubernetes is saying to the Ramu user, yes, you will be able to get the deployments. You have permissions for that. So this is how RBAC, role-based access control, works within the Kubernetes cluster. This is how role-based access control works within the Kubernetes cluster. Now, I've also explained another diagram, that is how to give the applications, what we need to use in order to give the applications, that is service accounts. We'll be discussing as the time got completed. Let's give time for some Q&A. As the time got completed, we will discuss everything, other parts in our actual sessions actually. Okay, is that clear for everyone? The concept is clear, the webinar is clear. Okay, so just do remember, tomorrow onwards, our new batch is going to start on Docker and Kubernetes. Okay, I'll be discussing. You can able to join the demo sessions, and you'll be like, this is the, I have already shared the link. Okay, so the the course entirely deals with the Docker and Kubernetes actually. So entirely the Docker and Kubernetes. So that's what the course entirely deals with. So we'll be discussing all the concepts that we will be seeing as part of the Docker and Kubernetes in the demo class and all those things. Actually, if you are interested, uh, you can uh, uh, you can join this with me, and we'll discuss that. Okay, this is the link to get. Yes, Chaitanya. Okay, so prerequisites of the course is nothing. You need to have one AWS account. Everything we'll be discussing from the scratch. From Natak. Okay, so everything we'll be discussing from scratch. You only need to have AWS account and one laptop. That's it. Okay, because we will be discussing from the place what is a physical machine, what is a DevOps actually. From there, we are going to discuss in our uh, uh, Docker and Kubernetes course. Course duration will be from 45 and 50 days. Okay, so something like that without holidays. Okay. Key thing, you are going to get the details as part of the, you're getting the details from the Naresh IT itself. Timings is 9 to 10:30 IST. 9 to 10:30 IST. Yes, 9 a.m. to 10:30 IST. No, no, Prasad. No weekly classes are available as of now. Okay. If you are liking the webinar, please go ahead to the what is that? To the uh, Naresh IT. Uh, One second. Let me share you the link. You can share your review there for the today's webinar. Let me stop sharing my screen and share the webinar the one second, review details there. Go there. Okay, let me go ahead and you can go through this link and share your experience for the today's webinar by mentioning the webinar details. Today's link is going to be uploaded to the YouTube. Okay, today's session is going to be uploaded to the YouTube, and you can view it from there. Okay, so no, see this this Docker and Kubernetes, you have something called some profiles called Kubernetes administrator jobs. Definitely that are there, but our course mainly focuses on the knowledge that will be that I can share uh, that will be helpful for you working actually. So with the Docker and Kubernetes and in details of the Docker and Kubernetes actually. So that's what I need to know. Yeah, you will be getting that information from the NareshIT people to read. Yeah, I need to, Prasad, I need to talk uh, with the NareshIT people regarding this. I'll get back to you on this, okay? Because I cannot take the decision of weekend classes and all. But yeah, so, but I can suggest. Okay, so if you are liking the today's webinar, go to this Google Meet review link and click on that and paste put your experience there and with the topic and with the faculty name so that it will be helpful for us. Okay. So, anyone have any other questions, please, before closing the session? Yeah, multi-stage Docker builds. Swati, yes, we have that one. We need to know the stages of code of writing for Docker files. Yes, definitely that is there as per the course. Course content will be shared up to from the next class. Actually, I should not share it today and all. So next class from now. Yeah, let me share the Git repo of mine so that you can get all the YAML files, or let me share in the chat itself so that you will be clear. Actually, let me share this particular YAML files which are required for you in order to practice. Let me go ahead in this place. Second. Mm, Come on. Yeah, let me share it from here. Okay, I'll just share it from here, and then this next part I need to share the role binding manifest file, right? So security and role binding. This is what it is. And this is a manifest file of role binding. And I also need to share AWS auth config manifest file. Let me put that one as well here. Okay, so AWS auth config manifest file. Let me take a look at this one. Let me put it here. Okay, so yeah, these are all the things. Uh, I've shared all the YAML files which we have used. Helm is covered, Prasad. Helm is going to be covered. Uh, Jenkins, no, because we are not going to cover any Jenkins anything. So, but yeah, Helm is going to definitely cover Jenkins and answer. Argo CD and Helm is going to be covered as part of the sessions. Okay, so both Docker and Kubernetes, actually. So daily timings will be go from 9 a.m. IST to 10:30 a.m. IST. The course timings will be okay. 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 Git repo. That's a private repo. I don't want to make it public actually. So that's a private repo. Harish, Hitesh actually. So I only yeah. Eh, Okay. Thank you. Thanks everyone. Thanks for joining with me. Definitely, I will be giving the access to Git repo for regular classes. That's a different thing. But yeah, uh, uh, thank you everyone. Thanks for joining, and it's great that we have meet together. And yeah, you'll be getting the Vamshi as part of the your. My name is Shiva. Yes, you will be getting the recordings as part of the YouTube. This video session is going to be uploaded to YouTube. You can get it from there. Okay, so CKAD will be covered definitely, Abduri. Yes. Okay, so that's what it is. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining. I'll meet you in the next session from the demo. And yeah, thanks, everyone. Bye.